either.
Yeah, kids are with their dad.
Nice.
Debbie's off on an adventure, and I'm just here at home after a very, very long week.
Well, all right. We have a packed note. And as usual, on Friday, I had nothing in my note. And then Saturday, nothing in my note. And this morning, I just had a bunch of thoughts. So I typed them all out and shit, man, I did not expect all that. So, how are you? I'm sorry. Hey, everybody, welcome to Public Access America. My name's Jason. His name's Jeffrey, and we get together once a week to talk about the week. And this week is packed full of stuff. And there's an interesting topic that hits our Venn diagram right in the sweet spot. So, but I want to find out how you're doing. How is everything? I hate starting a conversation before I know that with somebody, you know?
It's honestly, this week has been absolutely insane.
Mm.
I have I've just been so busy, and it is. I was trying to explain to the. I've been trying to explain to a couple of people. It's like I don't have words. Just like this week, for whatever reason, everything decided to hit the fan all at once.
Yes. Be the
So
be the pinball.
yeah, pretty much. So, between work and personal, and like I was up till pretty much midnight, and then getting up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's just
Mm.
like it's like, so yesterday, like, you know, like even though it was like, I got to do some stuff fun, this was all stuff that was like planned out weeks ago.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I ended up like just passing out on my couch last night for a little bit. And then it's like, oh crap, I should probably get up and, go to bed and all that other fun stuff. And my my decision to go to sleep has given me this lovely crick in the neck that feels really great today. So it's like,
Man.
gotta love that part. It's like, all right, I'm gonna do something responsible, and I'm gonna actually go to bed on time like I normally should. And they're like, body's like, cool, you get pain. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, sure. You know what? All right,
Yeah, I get
fine.
it. I was laying there last night and I was like, if I lay in this position, I'm gonna wake up with a sore neck, you know? So I get that. And that welcome to age, you know, everything you do to your body when you're a teenager and in your 20s, it really starts hurting you in your late 30s, early 40s, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and I know that this
Mm.
it's all a product of this like torn shoulder that I have. So that
Fuck
makes it
yeah.
all the more fun.
I'm sorry
So,
about that.
but my hope is that this week will change a little bit. And
In what way?
yeah, you're right. I need to be specific about that.
Well, I mean, did
Uh,
you catch up? Did you catch up enough to where you might get a break between storms?
oh hell no.
No. Okay.
No, it's different storms. So
Fair
like,
enough.
I've gone from out of the hurricane and into the tornado, and I'm not entirely sure that they are two different storms at this point. They might just be the same one, and I'm just like getting tossed around, and it's like, oh well,
Hmm.
the view over here is different. Oh wait.
Right. I was married to a Filipino dude, and if every second wasn't double booked, you weren't doing enough. You know? So I understand those storms. You know, everybody needs something right now. What are we gonna do?
Yeah,
Well, everybody's gonna go to somebody else and solve it. I
right.
get it. Yeah.
So it's just like I pretty much like my communication with people was so minimal this week.
Mm,
Like even Debbie, like for example, like just didn't have enough time.
right.
So
I,
that's one of those things that's like, I live with this person and I just didn't even have enough time to talk to him. I was like, that doesn't sucks. It really
that's why you
does.
make time, make the best of the time you have so that when you don't have that time, you can still ride on the time that you had. And you know, there's this prison thing. Don't yell at your bitch when she's leaving because she'll leave and have a week of that in her head. You got to
Right.
leave her happy so that she comes back. You know? People don't plan ahead that way. They're like, I'm going to be an asshole. You're going to deal with it. I'm not going to apologize. And a week later, I'm going to come back. All's going to be forgotten, and we're going to start back where we were. And
Yeah, that's
that
yeah.
doesn't really work long term. Like you can do that a
No.
couple times, but you can't do that as a lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Well, and I would argue that you really shouldn't do it even a couple times because, well, it's just, there's no sense in leaving people on negative stuff.
I agree. But I was trying to figure this out. Like sometimes you need to hurt people to get ahead in life, but you don't. And I think that's what I was tossing around in my head all week. Like, do you, is there a scenario where you need to like step on somebody to get ahead and then you can fix it? You know what I mean? I
I think,
I just don't see a
ooh,
way. I
this
don't
is a
see a
good one.
reason why I would need to hurt somebody to get ahead, but I also don't have very much of a life, you know?
I think so. That's a very interesting question, honestly. So here's what I would say. I think it just depends on what your definition of hurt and what the other person's definition of hurt is,
Yeah.
because what you might see as a very rational and responsible action could actually be quite painful to the other person because of your delivery, because of
Yeah.
it goes counter to their wants or their needs, and that's the tough part is that I think that there is a lot of unintentional hurt out there just because two people don't read the room the same way and they don't communicate
Right.
the same way, and what might seem like a perfectly responsible and logical response on one person's end emotionally just feels painful and devastating on the other. And
Agreed.
that's a lesson that I've kind of learned recently, and it's like,
But
how
isn't
do you learn from, like, how do you deal with that? Because
how do you deal with that? But more importantly, there's also these people that are looking for those triggers. Like, and I have a whole note I wanted to talk in the second hour about triggers, but there's a whole group of people that are hypersensitive to insults and they're looking for an insult in everything you say. You know, on the other side
Mhm.
of you just trying to live your life and you might hurt somebody with your delivery, that person is also hypersensitive to your response, you know?
Right, and I think that's one of those things where it's like it feels rough because, like, I've grown up communicating a certain way my entire life, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that I've had to unlearn, but in the same token, there's a lot that I still have to learn in how I communicate, and each person, I think, like, it all just depends on whether you're the kind of person where logic and reason tend to rule your brain, or if you're the kind of person where emotion and feeling is more important. And, like, I think that's, personally, one of my bigger downfalls is that it's not that I don't have feelings, it's that I have let logic rule my brain. I'm a very
Yeah.
analytical person, and that's just how I am.
I don't want to be a jerk about this to anyway, but in my personal experience, my over my life, my feelings and emotions have been dismissed because other people's immediate needs are there. You know what I mean? So I might be upset about something, they might be upset about something, but it's up to us to deal with them. And then, I don't really get to have an emotional response to things because I'm a
Mm,
rational problem solver, and other people are
mm.
more emotional. So their emotional needs come before, mine because I'm a rational person.
Which, I mean, that makes sense, and that,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, but at the same time too, it's also lends to, it's like, when the fuck is it my turn?
Yeah. I remember seeing Alan Alda cry, and I don't know why that stuck with me because men were always John Wayne, and then Alan Alda cried. And I was like, there's a whole nother end to the spectrum. You
Mhm.
can't be John Wayne. You have to be a combination of John Wayne and Alan Alda, sensitive and strong. And you have to do that at the same time. And sometimes that sensitive strong means shutting up and fixing the problem and hugging somebody that has a bigger problem, you know?
Well, and but also too, like, making sure you actually come back to that, and that's,
Yeah.
I mean,
It
that's
would
been a
be nice
person.
if we came back to, okay, thank you for helping me. Now, how are you doing? You know?
Right. Well, that's the thing, is like, that's been like a story of my life for a long time, is that,
Mhm.
I've had people in various states of disarray surround me my entire life,
Right.
and I've had to put aside my emotions, either because I was told that I had to,
Hmm.
or later on in life, or I was just trained to do it, and you just learn to set aside your emotions, go, well, We'll
Yeah.
deal with this later.
They don't fit
And pretty
into the
soon,
problem solving, list, right? Emotions don't come into problem solving.
the way that I've kind of started to think about it is with that stuff is like putting all of that stuff into a refrigerator that doesn't work. The
Uh-huh.
lights, the lights on, and there is a spoilage date on this, and that spoilage date is when those feelings start to become other things like
Mm-hmm.
anger or
Yeah.
sad, just uncontrollable sadness or any number of things. So I've had to start thinking about some of that in a different way, just because like I always just put things away. It's like I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that later.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that there was an inherent expiration date on that, and those things that I was going to deal with later, suddenly I was going to be dealing with them very directly and in a way I didn't want to.
I relate those to landmines. They're these little things that we just put out in the field so we don't have to deal with. But then when people walk up, they step on them. And then all of a sudden, they just triggered an explosion. They just stepped on an emotion that I had put off to the side to deal with other things. And then they
Mm,
just stepped on it like it was nothing. And I just reacted. I mean, that's like a trigger. And a trigger is like a response to past experiences or memories. You know what I mean? And
hmm.
it's attributed to PTSD. And I always think of
Oh yeah.
PTSD as something big, major that like the military deals with. And victims of abuse and rape and all that stuff. But I never really think that like persistent mental abuse, like just subtle stuff can really have that effect on you and trigger you in ways that I was just triggered this weekend by something, and it threw me off, and I just was so angry and short and just not wanting to deal with anybody because I
Hmm.
just got triggered about something that happened in my early 30s, you know? And it
Hmm.
was just so weird. So I had to look this up, and then I was just, how do I deal with that? So this is interesting. Do you have triggers like, I mean, is that how you see it? Landmines?
Um, I would say that for me, there is one specific trigger that I have, and
Mm,
I mean, it goes back deep into my childhood, and
right.
it's I mean, when you say landmine, I'm like, yeah, yeah, I suppose you could call it a landmine if it was a button that hit a nuke that was buried underground, because it just
Yeah.
I mean, it like it's powerful. It just goes off.
Right. And I'm so rational. It really threw me off to be that like emotional, you know?
Oh, what I've been told is I just go dead behind my eyes. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
like the lights are on, but the person that's in control of the vehicle is not me. And it's fair.
Yeah.
For me, it's physical abuse of women is something that I just like. I will avoid movies that have that,
Me too.
because there's a trauma that's ingrained very deep in there,
Mm.
and I can't deal with it. That's why, it's like the biggest reason I couldn't watch Game of Thrones was because there were rape scenes in it, and
Right.
things like I can't do it. I don't. To me, rape as a plot point is fucking tired. It's disgusting,
Yeah.
and
There's other
I
ways to show a male's dominance over a woman without a rape scene.
right, and I think that unfortunately it's I'm sure that there are ways that maybe if there was some a woman who had written about it as a plot device from their perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and what it could do or what it has done, like I still don't know that I'd be able to watch it, but at least then it wouldn't be like, all right, we're gonna have this really really tough rape scene, and this person's gonna become stronger from it. I'm like, motherfucker, I know way too many women that were raped in my lifetime, and to say that they became stronger from it is fucking bullshit, because
Yeah.
some of them have legitimately struggled living a meaningful life after their incidents.
Their
And
walls are their walls are taller, their walls are thicker, their walls are stronger, so they look stronger, but it's hollow.
oh, and to me, it's just one of those things where it's like I can't do it. But
Yeah.
even like physical abuse, like smacking, like actually like straight up hitting. Like
Right.
I had a couple of incidents where,
I hate gaslighting, things like that.
I
Yeah,
ended up
yeah, yeah.
just beating the ever loving shit out of a couple of people
Good.
because they had struck their girlfriend, partner, whatever in public, and
Mm-hmm.
I just came unfucking corked.
Yeah,
It
that
just
makes
not.
sense.
I mean, like there was one incident where I literally had five people holding me down, and at one point they had three on top of me. I literally just grabbed one and I just fucking chucked him
Mm,
because I was like that straight up blackout rage, like that you read about in like fucking Norse mythology.
yeah.
And so for me it was like I've had to spend a lot of time digging because I I genuinely don't want to hurt people. Like it's just not my thing. But that is something that is just there's something burned deep inside of me that I just I can't deal with it. And I don't deal with it well. And people don't get a good version of me when that happens.
I agree. And but a trigger explains it explains the reasons behind your reactions, and it's a survival response. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so I think that's really interesting that you put it that way. And I just don't think I don't think people you need to hold yourself accountable to your triggers. You need to investigate them and research them, but I don't think you should like be judged on who you are when you're triggered. You know what I mean?
Well, I
I
think
think what I think is there's people that get triggered and want to stay in that moment and figure it out. And there's other people that get triggered and want to flee and isolate and examine it that way or hide from it and not examine it. And that's the chance to examine your trigger and see where it came from and deal with it. And I like that. It's kind of like rooting out a problem. You finally found it. Let's hold on to it. But I believe in isolating personally and
I,
examining, you know?
and I think that's one of the things about it is that
You can't run from a guy beating a woman though. You just can't. You can't isolate yourself from that trigger. I'm
I mean,
sorry.
here's the thing is like, I can honestly say that I don't think that that's true because especially if you grew up where, you're a person who never had any type of power
Mm,
from start to finish, like if you were always, if you were always the one that was beaten too, and if you were always the one that you've just never had the chance to have that kind of strength, have that kind of power,
okay.
like everybody's response is different, and I think
Right.
that's the tough part in this is that I don't have a flight reflex. So for me,
Sorry.
so for me, uh, we always called it fight or flight, right?
Right.
Well,
Right. Right.
there's a third type that people don't know,
Stand your
or
ground.
more people are starting to figure out, and it's freeze.
Freeze. Stand your ground.
It's not even like stand your ground. No, it's literally like you have been induced to such a panic that literally you can't fight and you can't run. You are like trapped.
Ah. Okay.
See, because
But
at least with stand your ground, that would be considered a fight reflex.
okay.
But like, but like in this case, it's like straight up
Freeze.
terror stricken, like sleep paralysis demon level. Like you can't
Mm.
go anywhere, you can't do anything. You are trapped in
You
your
get
own
like a.
body, and it's like a prey response almost.
Do you get a pounding heart? Like a
I honestly,
disturbed stomach, dizziness,
I honestly have no
uncontrolled
idea.
shaking, cold and sweaty palms. Those are some of the signs that this website that I'll put in the note helps to if you're reacting to a trigger, those are some of the things you might feel.
Um, like so for me, like I wish I could say that I knew what I was feeling in that moment,
Mm.
but I don't. Like, I mean, like it goes. When I say it goes black, it goes black. I
So
am
you're
not
like
in
the
control.
Hulk, right?
But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to compare it, it's yeah, I pretty much go Hulk. It's like
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, it's a great analogy
it
for
really is for my
people, you know.
response. For my response is actually a fairly close one.
Right.
Um, uh, one that I've read about is like the one that I always compared it to is like if you read on Nordic berserkers, they would just enter a trance-like state and fight. It's like they would be dead
Right.
on their feet and keep fighting, and
I gotcha.
that's pretty much how I am. Like I
Yeah.
will have my ass just straight up kicked and it's like I can't stop. It's like
Yeah.
I start laughing. It's like, all right, let's go. Let's fucking go. And it's like there was one time I got stabbed in the stomach, and because I caught someone trying to roofie drinks at a bar, and
Wow.
this little bitch pulled out a pocket knife and stabbed me in the side, and I just was like, I started laughing. Like I started laughing, and you could just watch this guy like, oh shit, what did I do? And I literally just like looked down at my side, and I just pull this knife out, and I just like went and I licked it right, just staring at him.
Yeah, well, what else are you gonna do? That's crunch time. You know what I
The
mean?
dude
So
literally pissed himself when he saw that. Like he actually pissed himself.
yeah.
And it's like I don't have any reason for doing what I did, but like I just entered this fucking mode of like, you're dead. Even if I'm dead on my feet, you will die before I fall.
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
weird, and it's like that is a real uncomfortable feeling, knowing that like I fight like that.
Hmm.
And so that's why it's like I don't, I'm a person who likes to be in control of myself, and I would argue I have absolutely no control over myself in those moments, and that bothers me.
Nobody that's triggered has control. They're being triggered by something in their past and something in their present, and so you're not in any one time frame, and it makes it really difficult to keep your view of what's going on when you're in two times at once, past and present, you know?
Right. And so for me, that's been something that, I've had to, I've dug into that for quite a
Yeah.
bit. And, I've been told very consistently, it's like, well, do you feel bad about what you've done during those moments? And I went, no, I don't.
No,
It's like, I don't feel bad one bit,
I get it. Yeah.
I, you know,
I, d-
it,
I,
it
I
goes,
was
it
the
goes,
same. I was the same way in Wrigleyville. They were picking on this guy for being gay, and I thought that was so stupid in a gay community. So I just stood up next to him because nobody else was. You know what I mean? And they were like, "What? Well, you want to?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess. Right now, I'm gay. It doesn't matter. You know, what the fuck?" And then other people stood up and they backed down, and it was just like it was sad, but I just didn't think about getting hurt. I was just like, what are they doing to this guy? You know? And would they do it to a group of people? If they would do it to a single person, would they do it to a group of people? And so I just wanted to form that group, and I didn't, I just instinctively react to things like that. Like that, what would you do show? I would kill someone. You know what I mean?
yeah, like, and that's, and I think that's one of those things like I understand what my issue is, and you know I actively work to avoid it, you know in terms of like stuff I watch on TV,
Yeah,
but in public, like I will apologize to people later, but I'm not
yeah,
stopping, and I don't see any reason to stop. I will say that as like especially as I've learned about the kink community, and I've learned about, there are places where, people really do live this, eh, lifestyle where, there's a physical element to it. And you find out there's actually consent with this. Like this is how they get
oh,
their rocks off. Like there's been a lot of me having to learn. It's like, okay, this bothers you, but this is not your problem. These
right,
people, if two people enjoy this, that's not your problem. you
right,
you have a problem that you need to go deal with on your own, because these two people have a consenting agreement to whatever it is that they're doing.
right. No, I
um
agree. I agree.
and I think that's where, even I'm like, I'm having to caution myself on some things. It's like, you know knowing that, there are people that that's what they want. They want to be slapped around a bit, out
Right.
in public. They want this feeling.
Oh,
And
I
it's
don't
like,
think that's fair. I don't think that's fair to put that on the public.
well, here's the thing. If it were out in the general public, yeah, no, that would probably be like, because then
Right.
essentially what you're doing is, you're
Yeah.
you're being non-con about,
But
your
there is a
kink. But
schedule.
there are
There is a strict,
spaces, there are places
yeah.
and spaces where, people do this, and you have to understand, like,
Yeah.
you're walking into a space where you're going to see things that, you know consenting adults have agreed
Hmm.
to. And if you have a problem with it, it's you that has the problem. It's not
Right.
them. It's on you, and you have to deal with your own shit.
A couple like that has an agreement ahead of time,
Oh yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
times, places, and spaces where it's allowed, the dominance is allowed. And a lot of the submission is somebody just looking for someone to trust. And
Hmm.
so a dom taking advantage of that in some way without pre-knowledge of the events that are about to take place, that's taking advantage of somebody. You should never be surprised as a sub, but you should anticipate. It's
Right,
looking for someone to trust. It's not, it's something more than just getting hammered, like
right, right,
getting
right.
nailed in the middle of the night. It's yeah, I don't that
And
that
that's
and that's all them. That's not me at
right,
all. You know what I
right.
mean? Don't
And
vanilla
that's
shame me, and I won't fucking BDSM shame
kink
you.
shame you, yeah. And that's the
Right.
thing is like, even because like there's been a lot of people in the kink community that they actually will have all of these written agreements
Yep.
uh down and signed, and that way if there are any questions about this, or some, like, for example, if something legal
Right.
does pop up, um they have all of these agreements in place. It's like, yeah, nope, we are consenting adults, we have
Hmm.
signed off on this, this is something that we fully agree to, and we don't have any problems here.
That's right.
And I mean, that's like, that's a tough one too, because imagine being a police officer who, gets called out time after time after time to a domestic abuse, and you end up
Yeah.
coming to somebody's house where they have this agreement that, if if you were in any of the, 9,999 times that you probably walk up to this scenario,
Yeah.
somebody's coming out in cuffs and they're going to be spending the night in jail on domestic violence. But
Hmm.
here you actually have this agreement that, one person is doing something that the other person wants, and
Right.
in every other scenario this would be bad news for somebody,
Or
like.
questionable at least. Yes.
And I think that's where, I think that's where, like, being able to learn about a lot of these things and being able to explore a lot of these things in safe spaces has, made a difference. And when I say safe space, I
Sure.
mean places where that these, these agreements exist.
And
And
being non-judgmental to somebody that's into that gives them the space to come to you when there's something questionable. If you just abandon that person entirely because of how they live their very personal lives, they'll never be able to come to you and be rescued when it goes too far. So I like where you're coming from. It's learning. It's about learning. It's about standing back and giving someone the space to do them and also come to you if they
mhm.
need to.
Yeah, and so that's, in a lot of ways, like, there's you know I've had to confront my own issues in various ways.
Hmm.
This is what somebody wants, somebody's going to get what they want, and great, that's not your problem, you need to stay the fuck out of it.
Right. There's also these men, Jeffrey, that they feel like they're better than others or more attractive or more entitled, and they will request things on the spot spontaneously with their dates. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like choking is a very dangerous thing that you really need to know how to do. And that's not something you just grab a Tinder date to do without consent.
Oh Jesus.
You don't spring these things on them, but men will try and push the boundaries further to like weed out the women. You know what? I don't know. Women
Like,
will admit to things to keep a man, and a man knows that. So they will push the boundaries trying to get her to accept more. And that's the other side of it. There's this very consensual BDSM thing going on, but then there's also men that live on the gray area of that and want to be that, but
no, to
don't
me
want to
that's
take the time to know how to do it. So they pretend that they're experts and they hurt people.
that's not a gray area, that's just straight up abuse,
Well,
because
yeah, but they're using BDSM. They're living in the shadow of it to pretend that they are, but they're not. You know
well,
what I
and
mean?
I think that's where, like, the BDSM, the kink community at large, when they figure out who these people are, I mean, it's, you're named and shamed, because,
Right.
realistically, like, they all know this. It's like, these are things that will get people hurt. These are things that could get people killed.
Yeah.
These are things that, you know, for some people it's like they, the experience that they seek out is catharsis from a past event
Mm-hmm.
that, they're trying to work themselves through.
Right.
And the wrong person that doesn't, that isn't experienced, that doesn't know what they're doing, is going to do, at best psychological damage, and at worst,
Yeah.
physical.
It's a trust event. It's not a love event, it's not a lust event, it's a trust event, and somebody taking advantage of that,
Mhm.
to say, boo, surprise, we're gonna take care of this right now. Know? That's
So,
not fair. And a lot of
no.
kids, this vanilla shaming thing is trending, and it's so weird, the different things that are happening just in sexual forums, sexual identity forums, and
Mhm.
like kids are getting shamed for having vanilla sex. And it's like, why can't people just explore what they want? What somebody's doing today isn't what they'll be doing a year from now. That'll
Mhm.
it'll evolve, it'll change, they'll want to know more, they'll want to know something different. So why are we judging people for their sexual activities today? you know
Or you know what, maybe it won't change, and
Maybe it
that
won't.
is who they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's like, this is where that line between public education and, what your parent is responsible becomes, it becomes very muddy. Like, I realistically have no desire for schools to talk about, BDSM, kink, or anything like that. I think that's not a forum. I think, but at the same time too, if you have parents that don't um, really talk about, questions as they come up. I'm not saying you need to go out of your way and be like, hey, yo, my child's going to learn about BDSM today. No, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if your kid has questions, you're going to do your best to answer them, or at least point them towards reliable resources. Because realistically, everybody is going to have a different set of desires or expectations. And that's assuming that they have any desire to know about anything sexual to begin with. Hell, your kids may not have any desire uh, around anything sexual, and the idea that you're trying to get them to understand certain things that, just ain't in their wheelhouse, it's not a very helpful thing. So to me, realistically, like, all of these conversations that come up, all of these conversations that are going to be had, like it would help if we had more places where it's like, hey, here's where you could learn about this, hey, here's where you could learn about that. Because realistically, I never had that growing up. There's more literature that's available now. There's better online sites that talk about all of these different things now.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're at, there are places, there are people that teach classes on all these different things. A lot of them are more than happy to answer questions, that you may not know the answer to yourself. And I think that's one of those things where it's like, being able to help people help answer questions in a
Yeah.
proper way,
Sure.
so that way, knowledge is power. Knowing these things is powerful, and it's how you take the stigma out of everyday life for everybody. It's like,
Yeah.
you think about it, you know, when you look at the disabled community and you look at, how much stigma there is around that, what would it look like if, you had a place or a forum where, any number of disabled people could sit down and have conversations, and, kids had questions, if people had questions, they could
Yeah.
either A, watch these, specific videos, or B, they would be able to go and talk with people about what their experience is. Having that knowledge base there tends to make a difference. But the more you push something into the shadows, the riskier it becomes. I mean, that doesn't matter what it is. I mean, unfortunately, you'll see the same thing with abortion in Republican leaning states.
Oh
It's going to
yeah.
be no different. The more you push something into the shadows, the less safe it is.
The thing
Period.
the thing
End of
about any
story.
of it is it's consensual. LGBTIA is consensual. Everything about that, every term in there is about a consensual activity, which is why bestiality and pedophilia don't fit into it, because they're not consensual.
Yep.
And that's the difference here. I mean, if somebody wants to learn about something, that's fine if it's consensual. I mean, bestiality, if you're going to have sex with a child, if you're going to have sex on, with an animal, that should be pushed to the shadows. I don't think you should be doing that. It's not a
I
consensual
don't.
act, and I think you should seek help for that. You know
Well,
what I mean? But
so
but the but
I
the
do think you should.
LGBTIA thing, I don't think should
You're
be in
right.
the shadows. I think
Nope.
if a question comes up anywhere, anytime, we need to build parents that can calmly answer that question instead of reacting negatively to stereotypes they think fit into the class that's being questioned. You know what I mean?
There was a really good data point that got put out about how some people view the prevalence of certain topics.
Hmm.
So in the, and I think this is a really interesting poll.
Are we
In
covering
that,
the wrong stuff? Should we be covering other things? You have data that you're not sharing with us?
well,
Fuck.
it's one of those public polls, so I inherently have a little bit of distrust in it as it is.
Sure.
But essentially, what they did was they polled conservatives about uh, how prevalent they think something is versus reality where it is.
Hmm.
And so, like, for example, one of the biggest ones was like, how many people, what percentage of the population do they think is trans? And in this specific polling group, they answered something like, oh, it was something ridiculous, like 40% or something like that.
What?
They thought
Two,
they thought
2.5?
like no, it was 20%. They thought
Oh, wow.
20% of the population would consider themselves trans,
Wow.
when the reality was it was more like 1%.
Yeah.
And even then I was like, really, 1%? That seems kind of high, but
Well, if
I
you
don't
take
know if
into
that's.
account people that have transitioned and people that are considering to transition, I thought the number was closer to 2.5. But still, that's I don't and when you I don't know.
And it's
I don't
perception. It's all about perception. Like, for example,
yeah.
if you're constantly being told about all these different these different anti-trans laws and all these different
Mm-hmm.
viewpoints, you would think that it really is a huge problem. You would think that, oh my God, they're just out there, snipping and
Yeah.
snapping genders out there, and this is. But
Right.
reality is like, there might not be a trans person within 3 counties of you,
That's
depending
right.
on where you're at, and it's not an issue.
I
Like,
mean, 1% of 350 million is 35, right? 350, 3,500, one of those, and it's a very small number.
yeah, 1% would be, so if you had 350 million, 10% would be 35 million. 1%, or yeah, 3.5 million. And it's like, maybe there's 3.5 million people that would
Maybe.
consider themselves trans in the US, maybe. But that's to me, I'm not sure how accurate that is.
Right. I
I
think
don't
they would,
imagine it being 10 million people in the US, but I that's hard to say. Like, I don't have a data point to go off of with that.
I just think if you're thinking about transitioning, you should be allowed to do that. And that person is totally separate from somebody that's actually saving their money and actively pursuing it. So there's a big difference to me between people that are all right with considering it for them. Like I'm not going to lie. I've gotten high and thought about being transitioning. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but I've put thought into it. And I think children need to have the right to think, am I transgender? And maybe take a month thinking about it. Maybe I think they should have the right to think about all that stuff, but I don't know how you put those people in the same box as people that are actively having surgery and transitioning and on hormones. Like, I don't know what that number represents, and I just think they
Well,
should all be free to do it and
well,
think about it.
and then you have questions like, for example, what about people who are born intersex
Hmm.
and were assigned a gender, from their doctor? I mean,
Right.
technically, in a lot of cases, like in some cases, they're considered trans, and it's like, I don't know that I feel good about that decision,
Well,
because
it's
it's like,
such an instant decision by the doctor. Like, oop, boom, done. Like, and somebody has to live their whole life because one guy took a guess. That doesn't make sense to me.
right. And I think you've seen more power come back to the fact that, you know, parents are allowing parents are allowing their children to live as intersex until they go through puberty and then figure out who the fuck they actually are, because
Yeah.
they're male and that's the way that they want to go. Maybe they're female, that's the way they want to go.
Mm.
Maybe they're neither, maybe they're non-binary, and that's perfectly, but you end up having a group of people who got assigned because, well, I had to
Right.
look like mom or had to look like dad.
Uh-huh.
And then they're sitting there later on in life going, why do I feel more like dad but look like mom? Like, it
Right.
doesn't make any sense. And you've completely invalidated these people's lives and experiences. And I think that, this is about the depth of the amount of knowledge I have. And I think it would be really
Yeah.
interesting to have that conversation with somebody who is or was intersex and find out, from their experience what their life has looked like, because
Yeah.
it's very hard to be able to sit down and fuck, it's hard for me to sit down and figure out how I'm going to deal with my life today,
Uh-huh.
let alone have to decide, whether or not somebody's going to be male or female presenting for the rest of their fucking life, or until they're like,
Right.
why the fuck do I feel really, why does this feel really wrong?
Well, I had a friend, Lexi. She was on the show, and her story, it was really easy. She knew she wasn't straight, so she thought she was gay. And then once she was gay, she thought, I'm not gay, I'm bisexual. And then when she became bisexual in her when she was 17, she was like, I'm not bisexual, I might be pansexual. And then that's what she was. And it's like, if we go through our journeys with our passport being stamped with everything that we've considered or questioned, it would be full. And that's how it should be.
Mhm.
I feel sorry for the person that just has one stamp in their passport. I'm straight. That's it. Like, you never had a college party where you got drunk and just thought about it. You know what I mean? Like, I it must be
Mhm.
nice to be that secure. I've always
But
known I'm straight, but I've always given myself the space to consider other options. you
right,
know
and for me, like, growing up, it was really hard because, like, I knew so many women in so many different
Yeah.
towns, but I had no girlfriends. Like, and that's when and it's only been in my adult life that I figured out, it's like, oh, it's not, I was like, at one point I was like, maybe I'm gay or something.
Right.
No, it turns out I'm definitely not gay. I'm not gay, so I'm gay-ish, but not really. But
I get it.
it's
But you have the
but
space to figure that out. You
right.
had the space to figure that. There wasn't somebody over your head going, are you straight? Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you gay? And that's what I feel like society is doing to every kid in Florida. Like, are you straight? Are you gay? Don't talk about it. Are you straight? Are you gay? Because we want to know whether we should get rid of you or sterilize you or something.
Right.
We want to know, but don't talk about it. Are you? I don't want to know. Are you? And that
It's a
sucks. Like, I
weird
don't
fucking
care.
thing.
my
Like,
friend
right.
Sherry's my friend Sherry's daughter was like, I think I'm trans. And Sherry was like, what do I do? And I was like, nothing. Let her explore it. If she starts saving money to transition, then you need to know whether you need to support that or have further conversations. But until then, let her decide every day who and what she wants to be.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, it's tough because, like, you have to allow them to explore that, but you
Mhm.
also have to, there's also some direction that you need to be able to give a person in order to, say, hey, here are some resources that you can potentially read up on, here are some
Sure.
resources that you can talk to, here are any number of different things where it's like you can have these conversations and figure out what it is that you're,
Mhm.
you know what a person really who a person really is, and it's a
Clear minds make better choices, right? And if you give somebody the space to dwell on it and ponder it, they'll do what's best for them. But if you're constantly in their ear, you'll never know if what they're doing is because of what you told them to do or if what they wanted to do. And I don't understand, like, somebody could be 40 and be told they're straight their whole life and then realize, whoa, that girl's hot too. Maybe and maybe the whole time they just never had the space to explore anything.
Mhm,
And so they're constantly pushed in one direction or another to buck the
mhm.
system. I don't want to be what you think I am, so I'm the opposite. You're just rebelling. My mom loved country music. I loved metal music because she loved country music. Now I can relate to some of the country music she listened to, but no. you know? So if my mom was saying, Jason, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay, then I would have rebelled against that naturally. And I would have never known what I was, you know?
And that's part of where it's like some of this stuff, it's like
Mhm.
it's not your fucking business,
It's
like
not, yeah,
and I mean, even though, like, I have kids under my roof, like, it's not my fucking business in a lot of ways. It's like, who I've told my kids, it's like, look, if you ever decide to date anybody, as long as they're not an asshole, I don't give a shit who it is.
right.
You know, that's the one thing that I will say. It goes above and beyond any gender, any sexuality, any orientation, any anything.
Right.
There are assholes abound everywhere.
That's right.
They're in every section of, humanity.
Hmm.
And, abusers exist no matter where, which side of the, what die you roll, especially on a 20-sided die, they're assholes abound. And it's
Hmm.
not,
Yeah.
who your child loves, who a person loves, not your business unless there's some type of consent issue involved,
Mhm.
or they're an asshole.
Yeah. But the only way they're going to stay stuck with that isolating asshole abuser is if you abandon them and judge them for the way they're living. Like a woman could go and have a boyfriend, get punched in the face, have nowhere to turn to, and be forced into that situation. Or she could get punched in the face, run to her mom, and her mom could be like, I'm here, you know?
Hmm.
And that's the difference. That's why teenagers run away, is because their parents are like, do it my way or leave. And they leave. And they end up in
Yep.
some really horrible situations, you know? Sex trafficking is real. And a lot of it just goes on in the United States, based in the United States. It's not like some international conspiracy like Taken, you know? A lot of it is just um, vulnerable people going to inner city areas because that's where you can survive and be homeless, and they get taken advantage of, you know?
Hmm.
And then we judge them for being homeless and
Yep.
confused. And we
Yep.
wonder why they are, you know?
It
All
is
right.
very easy to spiral downward in all of this, or
Right.
you present knowledge, you present expertise,
Mm-hmm.
and you empower people, and magically, some of this stuff works itself out.
That's
I mean,
true.
it's not magic. I mean, that's what happens when you have a bunch of knowledge available to you. Is
Mm-hmm.
you end up with informed decisions. You end up with people taking their time. Sure, there's always going to be some rush to be like, "Oh, I'm going to make a decision," and in reality, it's like especially, with therapists that focus on sexuality, they're going to be the ones going, "No, no, 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 no. We're not rushing this."
Yeah, nothing's permanent. We all want to put a permanence on things so we can move on to other things, but that no, life is jello and it's always going to squish and squish. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like nothing is going to be how it is. When you put a stamp on something, that's God's way of saying, guess what? I'm going to make you question that. So
right.
that's what. So first thing, if you're triggered, is acknowledge your feelings, and then understand that you need some space, and then keep an open mind. You know, maybe it's not all about you,
Hmm.
and then if you're feeling negativity, emotions, um, practice positive actions. So when you're feeling negative, try and do things that make you feel better. Like when I feel that way, I do chores, I clean, I cook, I do stuff like that to make myself more manageable, my life more manageable. Okay. I wanted to wrap up on some of the trigger stuff because that's where we kind of started.
Yeah, right. We just kind of went that direction.
So create positive memories from positive experiences. And I like that one because that's something I call um, recording over the VCR tape. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
life is a VCR tape or a cassette tape, and you can just record new memories over the bad ones, you know? And I like to do that. And I think that's the best way of helping your triggers. You're always going to be triggered to some extent by something from your past, but if you can relate it to more positive than more negative, you'll feel less about it. You know what I mean?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. I like that. There was somebody on Twitter that apologized for their depressed tweets. And they were like, I'm really so sorry for showing everybody my depression. And I was like, no, I thank you for doing it, because that's the only way you're going to get some great advice. And I told them to listen to this live stream. We'd be talking about triggers and some personal experience and some professional website advice. And I told them to use the EarKick app as well. And I'm going to tell everybody to use the EarKick app because that's how you can recognize triggers. And so my advice would be to go in there when you're triggered and just put some information, some quick information, just the day, the time, and what happened, and then go away. And then come back and fill it out as you think about it. You know what I mean? And just keep doing that. It's hard because when you want to recognize triggers, you're going to see them all at once because you're going to be seeing everything. And it's tough. It's overwhelming. You got to pick one and record it, and pick one and record it. Even if you have to go back a month later and analyze all of them, but record in the moment everything that's happening and then go back and analyze it. And that's why I love the EarKick app.
Yeah. And important, and that's the other thing too, is that, that in the moment, insight that you can then, look at from 30,000 feet when you're feeling better is really important.
Well, what I do is I write myself a note when I'm in the moment, and this note will be 13 paragraphs long. And then I'll go back and I'll be like, that's not exactly how it was. And I'll revise it, and then I'll revise it and add things. And I'll be like, what did I originally have? Like, what was the original issue? Because I've examined it so much and changed it with my perceptions to normalize it that I forget what the original thing was. So I think we all want to fix immediately, but we need to take the baby steps, and then the baby steps. And then you'll find if you prepare for tomorrow you'll be preparing for the next day, and you'll have a good day. You can't keep putting things off for the next day and then wondering why your day's full of crap.
Right. No, that's absolutely the truth.
Yeah, it is. I like that. I did want to say, we're just a podcast. I'll end on this. I was going to have an opening statement, but I'm going to use a closing statement and say, we're just a podcast. And if you don't believe, like, a lot of people have they're told what to think already. They have their mindset, and we hurt their heads that way by having an open conversation that isn't restricted to politics or views. And I think it hurts some people's heads. And if that does that, you can ignore us. That's fine. We don't get a lot of hate. Nobody really hates us. You know what I mean? But we're not here to do that. We're not here for a view. We're here to have other views. And if you appreciate people having a voice like this, then go ahead and subscribe on YouTube or Red Circle or anywhere you find your favorite podcast. We're just trying to do something new, have open conversations. We don't have an agenda. We don't have sponsors. We don't have people that tell us what we're supposed to talk about. And I think that's really important
to talk about.
Right. And I think that's really important. And I think it's an important thing in the world. And I think podcasts are important in that way, but I don't think others cover the way we do. I think we're unique in the way we do what we do. I haven't found another Well, there's a podcast, Audio Pong, which I think is our Bizarro brothers. They both have these amazing voices, and they talk about stuff like we do, but they don't generally have political views. So hopefully I'll get them on the show, but I really do respect those shows. And I was on the Loner podcast, and the audio was corrupted because we talked for 3.5 hours. So we're going to have to re-record. So, and then Unsubscribe came out with a new episode, and I love Kai, so go check them out.
Absolutely.
Kai sent me a message, and she's like, I love Joy Odalocum. And because I sent her a Song Exploder episode, and I was like, I love this person. I bought the album. I'm like, I can't stop listening to it. And then she sent me a message, I'm going to see Joy Odalocum. And I was like, she's like, I'm just obsessed with her. And I was like, me too. I actually, before I send you a message, I listened to Joy Odalocum just to have a nice positive view on life. What kind of music what kind of music gets you motivated?
Define motivated, because there's a different
happy.
Death.
What music would pull you out of a trigger event? How about that? Let's end on that. What kind of music? Joy Locum would do that for me. What would do
Um,
that for you?
I honestly like sound goes out the window for me during a
Hmm,
trigger event. Like it's
okay.
there's nothing there. I would say my motivation, like it just depends. Like if I want energy, it's death metal. If I want to focus, it's lo-fi hip hop.
I like lo-fi hip hop. All right, I'm good with that.
I don't know why, but like it got me through my master's program, and it's like there's just something about it. Like when I
Mhm.
have to get something done, like throw that on, the world melts away around me, and it's like
Yeah,
it's just enough for my brain to be like, all right, you're entertained over here, focus. And it's like I can just move mountains.
I like that. That is a great idea because it's just enough to beat in your head, but not enough to where a lyric will catch you and then you have to fucking listen to the lyrics, you know?
Well, and especially like where I'm a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
This happened last weekend where um we found I found this song. Like I was going through Instagram and there was this, somebody had this song as part of the reel, and we end up looking it up, and listen to the song for a couple minutes, and I've already got the beat figured out, and I'm sitting there just
Yeah.
drumming it, and Debbie's like, I fucking hate your rhythm. And I went, what? Like, what do you mean? And they're like, you can listen to a song and you can immediately recreate the beat, and you create it in perfect time every
Yeah,
single time.
I
I'm
love
like,
that.
yep, I can do that. It's like you're just sitting there and drumming it with your fingers, and I know exactly what song it is. I'm like,
That's
I'm a
awesome.
drummer. And so like for me, that's I think why I like lo-fi hip hop is like,
Uh-huh.
because I like drum beats, and you know it's something that has a little bit of music with it. So it just gives me this like tempo, this rhythm for how I'm going to be working on my stuff. And so I can just kind of sit
Ah,
there and I just crank my stuff out, and I've just got, I've got this internal metronome going while I'm sitting there working on stuff. And so
yep.
it's something that's really been great for me.
Okay. I like that. Thank you for listening to Public Access America. Tune in on Thursday for our next episode, which we're about to talk about right now. But guess what? You don't get to hear it because you're a podcaster, not a live streamer. I love that. So I, not that we're on any subject. I cleaned up my band page and then I put 4 new tracks out, and I don't promote them or anything, but I got somebody commented on my Megadeth cover, the best, and I was like, I don't know how sarcastic that is. But then somebody reposted my version of Pantera's Walk, and I was like, that's cool. I got
Nice.
6 listens and a repost, and it's like it's a basic beat because I'm not a musician, but I'm trying to get my sound and style together. So if somebody did want to collaborate and actually put music to those lyrics that I put up, they could do that. And I like that. Maybe I'll be a band and I'll start making money off of iTunes in some way.
There you go.
I love I love
Just sit
music.
there and record music all day
Yeah,
long.
I'm really bad at it. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm bad at it, but other people have said they enjoy the music and I like that. So it's just for me, it's more of a therapy. And I like that. To me, because I'm blind, songs are more of a picture of the past than pictures are to me.
Hmm.
So the Venn diagram of things that you and I believe in, Jeffrey, I
All
know
right.
you
Well, we got.
I know you hate me for this. Well, no, I know you don't hate me for it, but you're getting tired of it. But the thing is, title 42 I've talked
Hmm.
about, immigration I've talked about,
Hmm.
and I've talked about it so much because there's this theory. There's a fire hose theory and a raincoat theory. People will spray bullshit on you before you know the truth, or you get a raincoat on them by spewing the truth on them, right?
Hmm.
And immigration and title 42 is what is going, the Republicans are tying every problem to. And that's why I wanted to talk about that. And your thing is food insecurity. You hate it.
Hmm.
Like it
Hmm.
triggers you. You go black.
Hmm.
You want to feed the world. And so Greg Abbott stopping trucks that have already been examined by Border Patrol a mile up the road, testing their tires and creating a 36-hour long delay, making food rot crossing our border, increases costs. And it's something so big, and it affects America, it affects the globe, and it affects Texas. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Do you know about this? Have you heard
I
about
do.
this? Because truckers are really getting upset, and
I do.
Beto O'Rourke is getting angry.
Hmm.
All right. So what's your view on this? I mean, does it make sense? So what he's saying, I'm sorry, I'll let you speak. He's saying that he's doing this because Joe Biden ended Title 42. But Title 42 doesn't end until the end of next month, you know? And it's an illegitimate, I've already told you, an illegitimate way of keeping people out. And stopping trucks for tire pressure doesn't make sense. How are you stopping immigration? You know? It's weird to me. And Greg Abbott, what the fuck?
Oh, this is another one of those issues where the Conservative Party is like, we're the party of law and order, and we're also the party of, less government, but we're also the party of we're going to get the fucking government involved in every little fucking thing because,
Yeah.
we've got our priorities that we're going to do. Oh God, this is why I hate the Conservative parties right now. So, the real reason, and I'm interested to see if anybody will do this, is that Greg Abbott is tired of undocumented people coming across the border into Texas.
7,000 a day.
That's the real answer.
Right.
And so rather than deal with it in any other number of different ways, he decided to take it out on truck drivers, which typically are the people who vote conservative.
Right.
I
And I'm sorry, so are ranchers, so are farmers. And
so
all those two rely on the day labor crossing the border, you know? Like you can't harvest soybeans in Texas unless you have day workers.
so basically what happened was Greg Abbott instituted these checks
Mhm.
simply so that way he could push these different states in Mexico in order to get them to stem immigration crossings into Texas. Now, this is where I think it gets really, really, really interesting. Um, Basically, you have the United States, you know, you have ICE, you have uh, border border patrol that's supposed to be doing this stuff as it is, and they really do a lot. Like there's no question about that. They actually are they really do a lot on this realm. To me, this was political theater and a stunt, and the reason I say that is that, well, not only did they not catch anybody, they wrote a bunch of tickets on vehicles that are, for which is really funny. Like I want you to consider this during all of these stops, Texas wrote some 12,000 tickets, but said that they would no longer do that now that they've reached agreements with three of the four Mexican states, which means this is one of those things that I hate. They gave the order essentially that they were going to have zero tolerance policies on things that were already law.
Right.
And so basically, what they've been doing is, up till this point, strategically ignoring their own laws until they decided they wanted to get something accomplished. And so they revoked that um, officer discretion and forced them to write all of these different tickets during that time.
Ah.
So this is where, like, this is bullshit. And I'm
Mhm.
going to call it out as bullshit because you were fine with this before, and then you weren't fine with it because you wanted to get this, the stem of people coming across the border stopped. And
Right.
now that you've done that, supposedly, you're supposedly going to be fine with this again. And that's where this doesn't make any sense. If you're going to have these laws and regulations, you have to enforce them, period, end of story.
Right.
Or what this means was they discriminated against the people that were coming through with these trucks and and would do what I would, look at as essentially malicious prosecution
Mhm.
because they had a different goal that they want. Now this will be an interesting, I'm curious to see if there are any truckers unions that will go out and um go after the Texas government for this in federal court, because I do
For
believe that
losses.
for not just for losses, but I would argue for discriminatory practice. So it would be really interesting to me to see if there is a case there, because you can't sit down and say this was fine, suddenly it's not fine, now it'll be fine again.
Right.
Like, look,
Oh
if you know,
man.
the expectation is that if somebody breaks the law and you get caught breaking the law, then you're going to pay a fine. But the idea that you're going to turn on and off the enforcement of this law, why the
Right.
fuck is it a law then? What's the point of this?
That's how
And I think,
Republicans see laws, as levers to turn on and off. Like,
mhm.
oh, uh-oh, we're going to entrap a bunch of white people, turn it off. Oh, a black person, turn it on. Here's an immigrant, turn it on. But
So,
my issue is that not only does it increase food insecurity and inflation here, but right now there's this little thing like the Ukraine-Russian war going on that's actually starving people in much, much poorer countries. And
mhm,
if a lack of food globally and the US has any ability to help with that, it's hindered by Greg Abbott's stupid fucking enforcement that has nothing to do with it. People are starving all over the world, and we can attribute that to two men. And one of them is Greg Abbott.
mhm. That was a really fucking dumb move. And I think
Was it
that
though?
I think it was really fucking
But he
stupid.
got what he wanted, and he might get reelected because of it.
Well, that's the problem of, uh, I think that's one of the things that
Yeah,
people who are blind supporters of these parties, they're willing to overlook that. My guy's in office, he wouldn't do that to me. He wouldn't.
he did.
He did.
Suffer from my politics. That's the Republican agenda.
And that's exactly what's going to happen is Texans are going to suffer higher produce prices
Mm-hmm.
because of those politics.
So are we.
Texans,
$5 avocados, bro.
mm,
$3 carrots. This is crazy. That's
you know,
crazy. And that's not even to mention the car parts that are coming across the border.
at least
You
those
know,
don't go bad.
I mean, we've been fighting inflation on new vehicles for years now. And we finally got the supply chain back going. We're going to start creating chips here. We're getting everything, the supply chain shortened, and there's Greg Abbott, sticking his thumb in the dike. It's like, fuck you, Greg.
This guy,
It's one
like,
thing,
and
it's one thing to affect Texans, but you're affecting Americans too, you
well,
know?
but this is the thing though, is it's like it is rules for thee, but not for me. If you
Mm-hmm.
think that Greg Abbott is going to suffer any of his own politics, you're fucking dumb. There's no, he is not going to experience any sort of problems because of the decisions he makes. And I want everybody that listens to this to think about that.
Right.
The politicians that make these decisions, it doesn't matter if they're Republicans or Democrats, liberals or conservatives,
Right. Right.
the
Right.
decisions that they make, they don't have to suffer through. Period. End of story.
Right. Good point. I just want
And
to say on that same point, Greg Abbott is going to be going from public housing and a government income to disability, where he's in public housing and a government income. He is the version of the elite welfare state that looks down on people on actual welfare.
so to me, it was a bold move. I think it was a real fucking dumb move. And I will be curious to see if any of the trucking companies, associations, unions go after him in federal court for this decision. Because it really was malicious prosecution. It was, I would even argue it was unreasonable search and seizure, because
Well, they
I
weren't
would
they weren't they weren't allowed to go into the trucks in any way. They were there to do the engine maintenance and tire pressures.
well, and even still, it's like I would still consider it unreasonable search and seizure,
Okay.
simply because it
Illegal
wasn't
detainment.
it wasn't it wasn't that these vehicles had any, sure, there might have been some mechanical issues, but what they've essentially shown is that these mechanical issues were only a problem
Mhm.
because the governor wanted to stem the flow of undocumented. And after this,
Right.
he doesn't give a shit again. So
Well,
I
until
would
he
call it,
does. until he does.
I would call it unreasonable search and seizure. Now, if it was
Well,
something, it's like,
you're a
hey,
more legal mind than I am, that's for sure.
here's the thing, like if it was like, hey, we're going to be stepping up and looking at the number of vehicles coming across our borders that are having problems,
Mm-hmm.
because we have a number of vehicles that, let's say, keep getting abandoned, keep breaking down, keep clogging up our infrastructure because they're poorly maintained.
Right.
Yeah, we'd all bitch and moan about it, but you know,
But
if it was continual enforcement and it made people take care of their vehicles before
mm-hmm.
entering the country, yeah, we'd bitch about it, but eventually, we would get over it because, well, if these trucks are breaking down and they're causing traffic jams and that's causing increased fuel usage and that's causing things to get from point A to point B slower, yeah, okay, that's a problem.
Right.
But that's not what the problem was. The problem
Mm-mm.
was not related to the fucking vehicles. The
It
problem
was
was
some
related
brown
to
guys
immigration.
100
Exactly.
miles away.
Exactly. So I would call what was done unreasonable search and seizure.
And by the way, they're just little brown people that want to harvest your fucking cabbage. Like they're not people. They want jobs. Yeah. Like I suppose there's some criminals in every group. The spectrum of criminality might happen, but
Fuck, you could pull together 100 white people and you'll probably get,
yeah, yeah,
five
yeah.
with a criminal record.
Right. But these are the people that are packing your chicken in plants for like $3 an hour because they're not legal. They come in, they work, they get a green card, like whatever they do. Now it's been made illegal. So those same people that used to have a card to cross the border, come and work and then go back are illegal now. So they have to
Mhm.
secretly cross. And they're just doing this so that you can eat food, like
This
right
was
now, an immigrant died this week so that you could have your fucking cornflakes and you don't even know it.
this was what we call a stupid move,
Yeah.
because I really do think that he violated federal law by
It
doing this,
really it really
and I
draws
think,
attention to it, right?
well, it really does. And it was, I mean, and it was huge. This wasn't a little hiccup that this was a fucking huge problem.
A huge
And
problem.
I would honestly be surprised if the DOJ isn't already investigating him for doing this,
Good.
because this, like I said, I do believe that this would fall under unreasonable search and seizure, because you weren't doing this before, you're doing it now after you just
Mhm.
had this glitch in the matrix time period where you wanted something done that had nothing to do with the vehicles themselves.
It's the
I think
two-tiered
it
system.
I think it is unreasonable search and seizure. I think
Mhm.
if it was in a whole new policy that Texas had enacted to keep vehicles from breaking down and clogging the
Right.
Texas highways, yeah, you and I would bitch about it and call it stupid, but it would be
The,
neither
the
here nor there.
the truth is if he had that issue, he could have just talked to the border control, I can't remember the agency that runs the border, but
Border Patrol
he
or
could talk to
Customs
them
and
and say, hey, by the way, when we have these trucks going through the border, is there any way you could check their tire pressures? Just make
they
sure they're
can,
running
they
okay.
do.
They do. That's my problem is they do all of that. And then a mile down the road, there's a couple state troopers blocking the road saying, stop, I'm going to check your tires. They just checked them, like, and what is this about? Immigrants 100 miles away crossing the
Yep.
border, you know,
So, and here's where I would say that
and to
if it
make Biden look bad, by the way, which I don't,
which made Texas look bad, because
yeah,
I mean, if they had actually caught some illegal people entering the country, I would argue that it would be different, but they
Greg Abbott
didn't.
bust illegal immigrants to Washington.
Yep. So I honestly like this, like I honestly think that Greg Abbott really fucked himself over, and I would honestly
Yeah.
be surprised if he didn't end up the subject of a DOJ probe
Well,
over
their
this.
attorney general is, their
Hmm.
lieutenant governor's about to be Dan Patrick, and then you got Beto O'Rourke, who is 2 points behind in the polls, you know.
So,
And I'm gonna tell you, like I emailed Beto O'Rourke, and I got past the first defenses. Like they sent it to the media for scheduling, which Beto O'Rourke, that's a long ways out because a lot of people want to talk to him. I don't. I'm gonna say I don't know whether I agree with Beto on a lot of things. I like that he has the stance he has, and I believe him. There isn't a lot of politicians I believe, and Beto is, for better or for worse. When he said, "Yeah, we want to take your guns," I understood that a bunch of his constituents just got shot to death, you know? But
Mhm.
I believe him that he wants to fix this abortion thing, that he wants to fix this education thing. Jeffrey, like, there let's see, Texas teachers, they have to do 200 hours of training before they can keep their jobs, and they don't want to do it because they don't want to get paid. They're not getting paid to do this training. 200 hours of training.
So we're looking at 5 weeks at 40 hours a week,
Yeah, and it's
full-time
it's
training.
to it's to improve reading for kids age kindergarten through third grade. And so the object is to make the teachers. I don't understand. You're pushing teachers to the edges everywhere you can. Why are they attacking the education system? I don't
Because they think
understand
that the
that.
education system is where liberal indoctrination takes place.
Ah, that's where liberal indoctrination happens on Pornhub. Get over it. It's not in our schools. Sorry, it's
Like
just the way it is.
it's insane, and it's like I grew up in a very conservative place in the world, and
Yeah.
like I guarantee you that a lot of these places, like the books that they're reading, this shit is so fucking old that like math hasn't functioned. Like, okay, so core math, whatever the fuck this common core stuff is,
Mhm.
it's insane.
Yeah.
But
They're censoring the math books now because there's statistics that they're claiming are critical race theory indoctrination because they're stats.
uh, it's,
That's scary to me that they're doing this. And it makes me wonder why they want stupid voters, why they want a stupid constituency.
the answer. Well, I mean, think about it. It's easy. Look at what's happening in Russia. When
If
you
you're
have a
making me learn lies, that doesn't mean I'm smart, right?
no, but it means that if all you can be exposed to are lies, it's easier for you to tell a bunch of lies and have one of them be believable, and the government go, we're going to go with that one.
That's right. I mean, that's the fire hose theory.
Hmm.
Donald Trump lied 28,000 times in 4 years, or misled, or spoken untruth. That's my point. He did that because no truth could get in that shitstorm, you know? Like right now in Russia, people are putting facts about the Ukraine war on labels next to supermarket items. So if you go to scan an item, it'll say the war in Ukraine has killed 20,000, you know what I mean? Or
Hmm.
whatever the stats are. And a lady just got arrested for that, for
Hmm.
putting a label on. Like right now in Poland, if you go to who I can't remember, it's like a Home Depot style that's in Russia that hasn't pulled out yet. Like somebody hacked their website, and in the descriptions of the items, it was this company supports the genocide. Like people are finding the smallest ways to get the truth out. You
Oh
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is that everybody sits down and goes through, oh, CRT is like the one of the Republican boogeymen, like
Right.
trans kids as one of the new Republican.
But they're both only boogeymen if people don't learn about them. Like if they just take the Republicans' word for it. If
Yeah,
people go and research what the boogeyman is, that's my point on immigration. If you research it, Todd, you would realize that none of these things are the boogeymen you think they are. They're just a demon that a guy uses to control your decisions.
and the crazy thing is that because of the way that the narrative is spoken, it's like kids are choosing to become trans, and I'm sitting here going, man, my kids are fucking lazy, and I don't know anytime that they're going to choose to play life on fucking hard mode.
Right. And people forget about that. Being
But
gay
it
isn't like a luxury in this world, you know? Being disabled isn't a luxury. People aren't claiming to be disabled so they can get some fucking windfall. People aren't black purposely, you know? They don't pick these struggles.
Right. And that's the difference is that when you frame it all around choice, which because we're supposed to be America and the freedom of choice,
Mm-hmm.
but they cannot get over the concept idea that some things are not choice. Like
Yeah,
the way that somebody's brain functions is not choice, and whether or not it's a mental illness or not,
it, mm,
it's not.
okay. It's not. No, you
I
said it.
mean,
Why would I repeat it?
it's I mean, there I mean, it's on the DSM-5 gender dysphoria, but I would argue that it's not a mental illness, because that would imply that there's something that you could do to make it better. And well, there kind of is and kind of isn't.
There
Because,
is. Get a dick in your ass if you're gay. You'll
well,
love it. You'll love it. You know what I mean?
being gay is no longer on the DSM, but in terms of being
Good.
trans, on the other hand, you know, what we consider mental illness, think about it this way. The things that we consider mental illnesses, they're actually
Mhm.
things you can do to the brain to fix it.
Yeah, but
So,
you
so
gotta
think about that. If you have depression, there's medication, there's therapy,
right.
there's medications that you can do in order to fix it. Bipolar, there's medications. If you have any number of different mental illnesses, there's medications that you can use to treat it. There is nothing that you can do to the brain to treat people who are trans.
But you got to remember, for a long time, the only example of a trans person was Buffalo Bill. So it was
Not true.
associated.
Not true. And this is something I just learned here this week.
Interesting. Well, I
In
mean, that
fact,
I wanted
in
to say
fact, we're
that's
going to
why I
go back
like that's why I
thousands
like
of
that's
years.
why I like I'm Jazz, because it gives a different. But go ahead.
uh, Dionysus.
Dionysus. Tell me more.
Let's see here. If I remember right, I want to say it's Dionysus. Dionysus.
I think there was a lot of gender fluidity in the Greek and Roman times. You know what I mean?
Let's see here.
It was more about pleasure than it was an opulence than it was about a life decision.
Dionysus. So the Greek god Dionysus.
Hmm,
This is
love them.
where this gets really fun, and I'm gonna go with people don't understand. He so Dionysus is born the god of wine, right?
Okay.
But what some people don't realize is that Dionysus was born a woman but became a man. I'm
Okay.
trying to find the
Zeus was represented as both a man and a goose, a, what is it? A swan. Like I don't know.
let's see here. So if I remember right, let me
Still, I'm gonna say that Buffalo Bill is way more memorable
well, I mean
and psychotic.
in terms of our own. Let's see
And
here.
that's my point: is that we don't we need more portrayals of positivity than negativity.
Let's see here.
If people only saw handicapped people on the news killing people, then they would be scared to death of handicapped people.
Yeah, so I would have to sit down and
Yeah.
read this, but Dionysus was born a woman, became a man, is the Greek god of wine. And so here you've had this, I would argue, the story of somebody who is trans from long, long ago.
But
But
is it trans or is it just gender fluidity? A god is a god and it can be anything.
well, I mean, the way that they talk about it is that it was born a woman, but literally turns into a man.
I I don't have a problem with that at all.
So this is
But
where it
again, it's
gets
attached to the god of wine, inebriation. Like there's still a stigma there. Maybe.
so it's one of those things people will ignore stories in order ignore
Okay.
history in order to create a narrative. Like, let's be real honest, Dionysus was around long before the Bible existed.
Agreed.
And so, when you force, religious texts upon people, which I would argue is also a form of indoctrination,
Mm-hmm.
um, you end up with a lot of things that you don't learn because they are strategically selected out of.
That's right.
it's one of the reasons why I don't support book banning or book burning or any of the number of different things. It's like I don't give a shit if you have, the Constitution sitting in between, the writings of Karl Marx and Adolf Hitler.
Right. It's all
And
knowledge, right?
it's all knowledge, because here's the thing is that even when you read bad stuff, you develop critical thinking about what that shit actually means and how it's
Right.
insane.
You also know how to debate it going forward. And you are
Absolutely.
absolutely right. And I want to get this on the record. LGBTIA plus history is impossible to find. It's really hard to document. You have a protest and that's it. You know what I mean? You have Harvey Milk and that's it. There's not a lot of like, I can't go back to the 1700s and I know there was LGBTIA activity, but it's just hard to document. It's gone
Oh,
into like frivolous, opulent lifestyle instead of
well, it was
LGBTIA.
there was a lot of code switching that was used in a lot of these times. So, like for example, the
Right.
King Ludwig of Bavaria actually was, I guess, a raging homosexual who had the hugest crush on Richard Wagner, one of the great composers,
Mhm.
and apparently famously threw a fit because Richard Wagner did not return King Ludwig's feelings.
Makes
So, I
sense.
mean, even within kingdoms, like you had noted cases of homosexuality.
That's what I'm saying. Caligula, the English king, King Richard, they had open, fluid lifestyles. If they saw a man that they liked, that was what they did that night. If it was, there would be a party and it was just body on bodies of having fun and it's opulence. It's not gay. You know what I mean?
So it's really interesting because that history has been suppressed in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
That history has been taken off the shelf in a lot
And
of ways,
and
and
replaced with you need to procreate.
when
That's what it's for.
replaced with lessons from the Bible, which somehow
Mm-hmm.
does not constitute doctrination, despite the fact that we have separation of church and state. Now, look, I'm not saying that your kids need to bring home books on, assigned reading on LGBTQ stuff, but I do think that those things need to be available for
Mm-hmm.
kids to read. Not unlike the Bible or the Torah or the Quran or um, any number of other religious texts out
Oh
there.
yeah. The beta
Because
text.
I
India.
to mhm. To me, having all of that information available
Mm-hmm.
is what allows us to sit down and have fruitful discussions about any number of things. Like
Yeah.
for me, I struggled with the concept that, a Buddhist who devoted his life to peace and helping others and prayer, for peace, was going to go to hell because he didn't believe in Jesus Christ. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I would argue that Jesus wouldn't say that you have to believe in me or you're going to go burn. Jesus would have never
Right.
said that. What the fuck?
That's
Like that does
right.
not make any sense. That does not make any sense if you read the book at all.
Yeah. We don't live by the morals of the Bible. We live of the word of it. And we look for
And
words and we'll read them backwards or we'll read them like diagonally to get the answer we want from the Bible. That's what it's built for.
and
If you don't
and
believe the Bible, read it backwards. You know what I
and
mean?
and the literal interpretations of it versus how figuratively a lot
Stupid.
of this didn't make any sense. It's like, Revelations. I mean, if you read Revelations and you read Roman history, you're like, oh, this is when Rome was burning.
Hmm. It just it's a way to tell people to be nice and stop hurting each other. And it's also a way to tell people, hey, if you're gonna blow your load, make a baby because we need to fill our pews so that we can get money and donations so that we can tell people to make more people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's what the Catholic religion was based on. Make more people. Don't you dare have homosexual sex. That doesn't make a person. That won't go in our pew. We won't make money off that. So it wasn't based on, oh, it's an immoral thing. It was based on a financial decision by the church, you
I
know?
mean, and realistically, like even up until the 800s, women could be priests in the Catholic Church, and on top of that, in order to have your sins forgiven, you had to pay for it.
Yeah. There's no IOU for atonement. I put that on Twitter last week because there was a section. The Catholic Church started taking money for absolution, and
Hmm.
then I think the Pentecost, no, a certain section went, no, that's not right, and they split off. So they were
Hmm.
Catholics that didn't take money for absolution, and there was this big difference. And then it all splits from the same shit. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's the same story. Everybody says every story can go be traced back to Shakespeare. Every religion can be just it's a repetitive form of the same thing. Like the Torah is the same thing as the Quran, which is the same thing as the Bible, which is the same thing as who the golden fucking templates, Joseph Smith and the Mormons. It's all the same shit. It's all meant to tell you not to do what you're supposed to do and do something else instead, you know?
Hmm.
So sticking on Texas, do you know who Crystal Mason is?
Crystal Mason. No, I
Crystal
don't.
Mason. Crystal Mason is a black woman. She got out of prison. She went to the Board of Elections and said, I want to fill out a provisional ballot. They said, you can't. She said, why not? They said, well, because you're on parole. She said, no, I'm not on parole. She went to her parole officer. Her parole officer said, here's a note that says you can vote. She took it to the election board, gave it to the election board. The election board said, well, you can fill out a provisional ballot. And she did that. And her vote wasn't counted because she did not, in fact, have the right to vote, although everybody said she did. And now she's facing 5 years in prison because she cast a provisional vote based on the election board giving her the okay because her parole officer gave her the okay. I mean, she's not Mark Meadows in Virginia voting from a double wide trailer that she knows nothing about, right? But
Right.
there's this
Okay.
two
Yep. I remember this story
there's
now.
this two-tiered system, and I want to take any chance I can to say that that's the real issue and that's what people are giving up on. Why would we hold Mike Lee accountable when we already know he's a criminal and you do too, and you do nothing about it? But you chase this lady for 5 years, dude, has been facing every Wednesday an appeal that might send her to jail for 5 years.
Yep.
Every Wednesday, she wakes up and she might be going to prison. But yet, Mark Meadows, who the fuck cares about him? The lady that owns the double wide doesn't even know who Mark Meadows is. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
he's okay. It's okay for him to do it. A guy in Pennsylvania resurrects his dead mom to vote for her. He gets 6 months probation, right? Like,
Yep.
and the weird thing is it's different states. So it's hard to calculate, you know.
Oh yeah.
Texas is being rude, mean to a black lady, but Pennsylvania is being nice to a white man. So how do you compare all this? But there is this system, this two-tiered system. White people can get away with shit that black people can't, and white rich people can get away with shit that poor white people can't get away with. It's the staggered tier system that drives
Hmm.
me crazy. And politicians are like, why are you disenfranchised? Because we see this, and you don't think we see it, but we see it, you know?
Right. And that's the thing is like the fact that she got a letter from her parole officer saying, "Oh no, you should be good to vote."
Yeah,
That right there shows number one, that whatever this case is against her needs to be tossed out because
that's right.
somebody from, and this dude probably, either if he's not fired, probably needs to at least go on administrative leave.
Well, here's the thing, it was a provisional ballot. She didn't vote, but she's accused of voting illegally. But it's a provisional ballot, which means it doesn't count unless it is legal. But it wasn't legal, so it doesn't count. But she got arrested for voting illegal. She never voted. She
Just never
tried.
counted.
I mean, she put it in the if I can, will you put this in there for him? You know what I mean? It wasn't like she tried shoving it through and coming back in sunglasses to vote again for his
Well,
brother, you know?
and there's nothing, and there's nothing that you can do to go through and just ask the question of the judge, "Hey, am I allowed to vote?" and get
Right.
a ruling on that.
Right. But you know what it does do? It scares the shit out of everyone else in that same scenario. Every other brown person, black person, minority person in that state is
Hmm.
like, we could be the next Crystal Mason. And I think that's the point.
Yep.
It's sick.
Absolutely. Which is really fucked
Gross.
up, especially when you're told by the person that you're supposed to be checking in on this stuff with.
Right.
Yeah, that's fucked.
So I don't know. That's just Texas. Welcome to Texas, everybody.
Where the rules are made up and the enforcement doesn't matter until it does,
Yeah.
and then it won't again.
So is Russia a terrorist state?
At this point, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we've known that for a while. You look at I will give you a few
Oh, I
smattering
agree.
of
They're
options.
using ISIS tactics. I'm just wondering. I wanted to
So,
get your
so
opinion.
I would say that yes, they're a terrorist state. Here is my opinion on why I would argue that. Number one, uh, the Novichok poisonings that have been done around the world to opposition Alexei Navalny, but also to former spy in Salisbury, England, I believe it
That's
was.
right.
Um,
They put radioactive poison on a doorknob, dude.
yeah. So I mean, that right there is just number one, like terrorist
And
activity
there was
right there.
another guy in a hotel room that left traces of radioactivity all
Yep.
over the place. Okay.
Yep. So
So
there's that.
poisonings.
You have cyber hacking, cyber ransoms that are done by the Russian government.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then of course you have what essentially is, military orders, but they refuse to fly their own fucking flag on their vehicles. Like, bruh, come
Right.
on, we know it's fucking you.
Right. Not to mention bombing civilians, putting automatic weapons in Toyota Tundras. Like they learned a lot of shit in Syria that they're using here, and they learned that shit from
Oh,
ISIS. You know what I
laying la-
mean?
they put fucking landmines in farmers'
Right.
fields, and now that they're trying to do planting, there's a case where a Ukrainian farmer actually got blown up because he hit a fucking anti-tank mine.
They're digging up bodies to burn them to hide evidence that they killed people.
They're also booby trapping bodies that are left
Yeah.
behind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree that Russia is a state sponsor of terrorism.
Right. Are you looking
Um,
forward to the new Nordic NATO?
wow, now that's gonna be fucking fun.
800
Um,
extra miles of NATO territory, NATO border. I
once
love
again,
it. I love it.
I'm just gonna say this: NATO was fucking floundering,
Mm-hmm.
especially under Donald Trump,
Yeah.
and Russia has done more to sell NATO than
Yeah.
NATO could do to sell NATO.
Yeah. And did you hear Trump said he actually rebuilt NATO from the ground up.
The only,
So
yeah, no, not true. Number one,
he
again,
did get
but
people to invest more into NATO is what they should be doing, and
that
I think that's
much.
what he's considering rebuilding or reforming.
Well, and that was something that needed to happen. I would argue is that
Mm-hmm.
these countries needed to invest in their own because logistically speaking, if there was a problem that needed to be addressed, if we needed to get the kind of troops over there that we needed in order to
Yeah.
address a problem, Europe has to defend themselves first. NATO has to defend themselves first
Mm-hmm.
while we get more assets over there, while we get more supplies over there, while we get
Right.
more technology over there. And NATO is kind of like that, it's kind of like that preparedness. It's like, here's our forward operating stuff in case we need it
Right.
while we go and get the rest of our shit.
Right. So one of either NATO was a paper tiger or Putin was, Did you hear that he sent a cease and desist letter about us arming Ukraine? So this,
Yeah.
what I find interesting is he's threatening retaliation for this. And isn't that an Article 5 situation? If he
No.
was to cyber attack us, isn't that an attack on one is an attack on all?
Yes.
Not that we would bring our armies in, but wouldn't all of NATO offer a response to that?
Um, there's been a lot of discussion, and I don't know that when NATO was originally drawn up, that cyber was necessarily considered a part of that treaty.
Yeah, I'm just
There's been
curious.
a lot of discussion between different parties, and I think it just kind of depends on what the goal is. I think it's been
Avoiding it.
kind. It's not. I mean, when I say that, I mean what Russia's goal would be, or any other nation state's
Ah,
goal would be in doing a cyber attack against a NATO member. So, like for example, if the goal was to cyber attack Poland, so that way their defense
mm-hmm.
systems were down,
Right.
yes. But if it was like to hold their central bank hostage, that's a tough one.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like it's I don't know that it's particularly clear what would necessarily constitute an Article 5 trigger in the cyber realm, and I think there's a lot of discussion going on about that right
Does it
now.
make more sense for Biden to declare that red line before Putin does?
Um,
Or does that just
I think,
provoke Putin.
well, I mean, joining NATO provokes Putin. Not joining NATO provokes
Well,
Putin.
yeah. I took a shit earlier that provoked Putin. You know what I
At
mean?
this point, it doesn't really matter. Putin's off his fucking rocker,
Well,
and so
that's the agenda of Russia is to be provoked, is to act provoked. You know what I mean? About
yeah,
everything.
yeah, and that's realistically all that's happening is that Putin's basically
Hmm.
deciding what's going to piss him off today, and
Right.
then the Russian army has to react to that. So that's
Putin had a hangnail and he threatened to retaliate with nukes, you know?
yeah, basically. So I mean, that's the tough part about Article 5
Yeah.
is that I think that there is more discussions and agreements that have to be held when it comes to cyberspace and
Mhm.
Article 5.
Gotcha.
But I think that's one of those ones where like when whatever they decide, they're going to have to communicate that very clearly to the world,
Hmm.
because that would also require a response in kind, which would mean that all of these different nations would supposedly have to be on the hook to supply cyber um,
Right.
assets in order to deal with whatever attack happened on somebody's infrastructure. So that makes things a little interesting and a little more difficult. It's not like a conventional battlefield where it's like
Yeah,
if you have a
exactly.
missile or a plane or a tank or an army cross a border, it's very much you've decided to do something offensive. We're a defensive alliance. Now you're going to have to deal with us.
Doesn't evil work in those gray areas though? Like China can shoot a satellite in space and we're like, well, it wasn't ground war, so we don't know what to do.
I mean, it's not like we didn't shoot a satellite in space.
Of course we do. Of course we
We
do.
we did too. It's like that's one of those things where the faux outrages and it gets so fucking annoying. So like,
Oh,
China
faux
shoots down
outrage.
a yeah, China shoots down one of their satellites that's having problems, and China is irresponsible and blah 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 blah. Meanwhile, in 2009, we did the same shit when
But
we shot down one of our tumbling satellites, and it was like, oh, it was a necessary
oh
operation,
yeah,
and
that's
this was going to
right.
be, and it's like, okay, come on, like
It happens.
it's either fucking stupid or it's not, and you all just have to figure out it's not how like this is one of those things. Like, I'm not necessarily sympathetic to the Chinese government, but how could you not look at us shooting down one of our own satellites
Right.
from another perspective and not see that as a potential provocation, like, especially if you're saying, hey, don't you dare fucking do this, but watch us.
Well, it shows them we have the capability to do that, and they want the
Exactly.
capability as well. But faux outrage, I like that. China's faux outrage, I like that. And you know who hates Lindsey Graham more than me? China.
China.
China. He visited Taiwan. They held fucking war games around Taiwan because of it. Lindsey Graham is nothing. He just went there to get some sweet, sweet Taiwanese tail, and we're holding war games because of it.
everything
China.
everything everything that I've heard about Lindsey Graham is not that Lindsey Graham is looking for sweet sweet Taiwanese tail. It's that
Mhm.
he'll show up wherever there's a free meal supposedly.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
like
I
I'm
get
like,
you.
oh, Lindsey Graham's that person where it's like if there's a fucking potluck, he won't bring a dish, but he'll certainly eat yours.
Lindsay, if you ever want to come to a potluck in Pensacola, I would be happy to host you. What I think is interesting is he comes here and he sits in the Senate and he has this very micro focused view of, I need to support Trump. And what I want to know is when he got on the global stage and actually saw what was happening in Taiwan because of his rhetoric, because of the collective rhetoric of America first, everyone else last. He's in Taiwan seeing these war games, seeing China set to invade. Does he realize that democracy is really struggling because of what he's doing? You know, and I hope that he sees the correlation between the words in the Senate that he uses and the actions of dictators around the world.
I still think, and as much as I don't want to admit this, I still think that if you had a Republican Party with an ounce of brain cells that actually functioned,
Mm-hmm.
if they ran Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney, I would guarantee you, not only would they
I
win
think
the
so.
Republican election on that side,
But they're so
but
hated, dude. They're
but they
hated.
but if this is who the Republican Party endorsed as their candidates,
Hmm.
not only would they win that side of things, but I guarantee you from the left, you would see a bunch of people come over and vote for Romney and Cheney,
You would see more
because
on the left than the right, I fear.
I honestly think that you would see just an absolute fucking thrashing of the party, of the Democratic Party, because the realistically, this is a shit show. They have not done well.
No, no, nobody's doing well in this atmosphere. And
And
you got to remember that Republicans are 20% of the population, and Republicans that support Donald Trump are 16% of that. So
mhm.
it's not like a majority. I mean, I keep hearing on the news 40% people support, 70% of the people support Trump. That's not true. That's not even 70% of Republicans. So you might be right. Mitt Romney might do it, but Republicans don't like Liz Cheney. And I don't know why. She is acting like a Republican. And
Oh yeah.
somebody made this interesting view that it was these legacy family Republicans that are standing up for Republican values.
Yep.
It's and that's interesting, right? Like
Yep.
Larry Hogan, Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney, these people with political families are
Like
actually the ones standing up for it. And I
like
like that.
Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney wouldn't challenge Roe versus Wade, but they certainly wouldn't support it either.
Right.
And Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney, like, well, Cheney voted, I want to say, in the House, Cheney voted with Donald Trump more times than any other Republican,
Well,
if I remember correctly.
97% of the time she voted against Build Back Better. So she's still voting Republican values, you know?
Absolutely. Like, she is a Republican through and through. There's no question
Hmm.
about it. It's just that, she's who I would consider one of the sane Republicans, and that it's like she has conservative values. She just doesn't trust that guy.
I I I'm the same way. Like I kept telling people I just don't like him. It's not politically based, it's personally based. He has no moral values.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't hate Trump because he fucking made moves economically. Thank you for juicing the fucking economy in a time when I needed it juiced, but you're
Right.
kind of a dick about it. And you told me to put bleach and UV light into my veins, and you're an idiot, you know?
Like I said, if Trump's last 2 years in office were like his first 2 years in office,
Yeah.
like if the trade war wasn't started,
Yeah.
if he had actually
Yes.
had a decent response to COVID,
Yeah.
Trump would have been reelected. Period. End
And
of story.
I
But
just,
he did so badly with all of that. He fucked over so
yes.
many people.
Yeah. But it's like Biden's Build Back Better. He wanted to do everything in one swoop, you know, like I'm going to fix it all. And he took major chunks, and that's not how things are fixed. You don't, you don't avoid an iceberg at the last second, right? It takes multiple steps to turn the US economy. You can't just go suddenly we're in a trade war with China and that's going to solve everything. It doesn't work that way, you know?
No, no, and it was really fucking dumb. It was really dumb.
As dumb as the Democrats trying to do everything all at once, you know?
God, this has been special. It's like
It
Build Back Better,
is.
like the idea that Build Back Better had to be this giant fucking omnibus, like,
Uh-huh.
just
Yeah.
shows a lack of fucking foresight. There were so many
Yes.
wins that you could do, like infrastructure, like electrical infrastructure, especially if you wrote it in such a way that it would put
Hmm.
people back to work in Detroit and
Yeah.
Michigan as a whole, and Ohio,
Yep.
in Indiana.
Yep.
Like, you could have absolutely done Build Back Better in that regard and
And you
have it
still
be like,
can.
and you still could. There is, like I said, there is no reason that the Motor City couldn't be the electric Motor City. There's no reason why that couldn't be Detroit.
It's
There's
going to be,
no
isn't it? Like two major companies just started producing electric vehicles there or electric batteries there. It's the renaissance. It's going to be the electric motor city any day now.
And that's the thing is that, especially, like, and I would argue especially in this time where the more we look at energy diversification, supplying
Hmm.
electricity to the grid, let me be realistic, we got 10% of our energy from Russia. And so realistically,
That's right.
we need to figure out ways to offset that 10%. And
Hmm.
realistically, if you can supply more electric vehicles, if you can supply more battery power to homes, if you can
Yeah.
supply any number of different options, whether it's solar cells, whether it's wind turbines, whether it's large scale factories that
Yeah.
produce these things, microchips, any number of things that
Skill,
could
Skill,
legitimately.
Skill has a lawn care commercial that says, we got to fight high gas prices. Go with electric. Like their whole series of lawnmowers and hedge trimmers is built on that. We need to
Yeah,
get away from gas, and that's skill. Like that's a man's company. We should be thinking, and we are. That's the thing. Is the same person that's buying a hybrid is still complaining that we're villainizing gas and oil, but they're switching. We're moving. It's just whether you're going to kick and scream and slow it down or get on board and go with the change that we need. Fuck, Saudi Arabia could turn on a spigot and solve the oil problems of the world. They're not,
well,
right?
I mean, and that's the thing is like if the United States really thought about it, it's like this is the way that you fight a cartel. You create a
Yes,
supply that they
right,
either have to undercut
right. How do you
or
get
they
off
get left
drugs?
behind.
Stop doing the drugs. How do you put a dealer out of business? Stop buying his product. Yeah,
Hmm.
totally get it.
So
I
yeah.
love that. So let's see. Oh man, Jeffrey, we're running out of time. I want to bring this up because nobody else is covering it this way. Elon Musk, we talked about last week, had got a majority share in Twitter, and now um he wants to do a forced takeover, and there's this poison pill that Twitter's doing. I think he bought a majority share in Twitter and he's trying to jack up the prices of the shares by saying he's doing a hostile takeover, but I know he has no plans to actually do that. But people aren't discussing it as stock manipulation. They're like, oh no, it's a freedom of speech thing. It's not. It's stock manipulation to me. Is it?
Ooh.
I know. What a way to end the show, right?
Yeah, you really want. I think I think it's one part stock manipulation, one part troll.
I think it's a lot of troll, but is it trolling for stock manipulation or freedom
I
of
think
speech? Like
the
Elon Musk? Ah,
which is really, I mean, to me it's really funny because Twitter actually tends to lean more conservative in terms of things available, like
uh-huh.
the voices that are on there.
Yeah,
But at the
yeah.
same time too, I think the issue at hand is that most people don't tend to recognize what freedom of speech in the online realm looks like.
Right.
You know, it's really
Well, it's weird. It's you'll say something like happy birthday and somebody will be like, I hate you. like somebody tweeted, some Florida account tweeted happy Easter, and I was like, sorry, Easter is attached to rainbows. Rainbows are attached to the LGBTIA. Your tweet is available to all ages. I think I'm going to have to tell the governor on you. And that's the way Twitter is. There's no middle ground. There's no compromise. There's no discussion.
right,
There's no rationalizing. There's just anger, as much anger as you can throw at a tweet as possible.
right. So it's one of those things like
Hmm.
it's there's so much bullshit,
Yeah.
and it's
Somebody
just
asked what would you do if Elon bought Twitter, and I was like, if it turned gross, I'd leave. That's my right to do. That's why I left
or
Facebook.
or then there's me who does not have, like, I've got a Twitter account that I never use.
I never asked you for it. I never wanted it.
I literally, like, I don't use it at all, and so it's like, so I
Yeah.
and this is the thing was is that I got it for trying to do some research
Hmm.
quite a few years ago, and yeah, it really I've never used it. So like literally they could be like, yeah, we're just gonna start deleting these accounts, and I'd be like,
Yep.
okay.
Bye.
It
Thank you.
doesn't, yeah, it doesn't bother me if I don't make the cut.
And
I think I think that's one of the biggest things though is that people don't understand the difference between bullying online and
mhm.
their quote unquote upholding, quote unquote Christian values, which
Right. It's one thing to be attacked for something you do. It's another thing to seek out something to attack. You know.
exactly. And that's just it, is that people go combing through this stuff. They're
Uh-huh.
looking for any reason to, like, because they're feeling tough behind a keyboard. Yet
Yep.
there's within that group of people, they wouldn't say jack fucking shit in real life.
That's right.
And
That's
you know
right.
what? And that's the thing, is that the reason I hold the set of values that I do is I believe in leave people the fuck alone. It's
Yeah.
you literally go out of your way to spend time and energy attacking somebody else or saying
Yep.
something that literally isn't going to change anything. You're trying to
Right.
win fake internet points
That's
that
right.
do absolutely nothing. There is nothing that you're going to do at the end of the day with all of those likes and retweets that you might get that's going to
Right.
do anything physically, financially for you. In
I
fact, I would
know.
argue that depending on what you write, you might actually find it very difficult to get a job because they go through that shit.
Yeah. That's hilarious. I had a thought and then I lost it. That's so funny to me. Thank you. Do you have any just the tips before we take off?
Oh, just the tip.
Just the tip. Hmm.
I had a really good one earlier this week and I totally forgot to write it down.
That's fine with me. We got plenty of
Um,
them.
Here we go. I've got some really hilarious and bad ones. Just the tip. Uh, any picture of Batman as an adult is a family photo
Okay.
because his parents are dead. Um,
That's funny.
Eating popcorn is just swallowing a bunch of busted nuts.
Yeah, I like that one.
So, I would say, like, because my week was an absolute shit show. My just the tip would be make sure you're evaluating your job, what you're doing, and not going crazy.
Yeah.
Like, we all go through tough times at work. Like that happens. Like, we're all going to have weeks where it's just like, holy shit, this is way too much. But it shouldn't be that way every week or every month. Like especially like in project world, like you'll get projects that are just absolutely balls to the walls for a couple of months straight.
Mhm.
But if it's like that all the time, make sure you're not understaffed. Make sure that you're not,
Yeah.
just being taken advantage of, because it you can only hold that up for so long before you just break. And then not only are you not going to be able to do your job, but you run the risk of losing the job that you have because you're just completely exhausted.
Yeah.
So
Work is what you do, it's not who you are.
exactly. So make sure that you're checking in with yourself on your job and understanding that if things are crazy, they might be crazy because of a project, but if it's crazy all the time, then you need to take a look at what you're doing and figure out if this is too much for you.
Perfect. I'll just say my just the tip is you need to pay attention more to what your kids are doing online. Facebook has this dirty little pervy uncle called Instagram. And if your child's under 13, they're not supposed to be on there. And I just want to say there is some very disturbing stuff on Instagram involving very small children. And you need to monitor that. You need to know what your kid is dressing like when they're doing these little dances and videos. You need to pay more attention to your kids because there's a lot of gross people out there.
You know,
Sorry.
here
Sorry, it's
I
just gross to me. It's I don't trust
just
Instagram and Facebook to begin with, and to let my child just alone with them disturbs me, you know?
I would say, here you go. Just the tip. Parents, stop giving your kids access to things just to get them to shut up. Like,
Yes.
my
Thank
kids,
you.
my kids have access to things because I have taken the time to review it.
Mm-hmm.
I have taken the time to talk to my spouse about it. And I have taken the time to talk to my kids about what they are and are not allowed to do on these sites. And that conversation changes as they get older,
Yeah.
because eventually they're going to be they're going to be adults. They're going to be able to do this stuff. And I can either set them up for failure later, or I can
Mhm.
set them up for success now. And being an involved parent, not a hover parent, an involved parent, helps them, understand what the choices are, help them make choices that are good for them to establish good processes,
Mhm.
and let them be adults that want to come to you later and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing something. What do you think? Because they're looking for information, they're looking for guidance, and they're looking because you have set them up for success so far, so they don't have any reason to think that you wouldn't do the same again.
Yeah, they're going to ask the questions. It's just, are they going to ask Jeffrey or are they going to ask the stranger on the internet? And if the question is, am I beautiful? Am I worthwhile? Yeah, you don't want a stranger answering that question for your little girl. You want to be there. And you can't do that if they're getting these uh, just monitor your kids' social stuff, please. I don't want my nieces and nephews to fall prey to a predator because you didn't want to pay attention to them more.
And
That's
also
it.
make sure you tell your kids about what sites to avoid so they don't find your online sex tapes.
Oh yeah. Oh, those are the worst.
I feel sorry for this generation, because I
Yeah.
know damn good and well that there's going to be a bunch of them that they're going to be like, Mom or
Yeah, but
Dad.
they're all vanilla sex, so they're all just going to get judged for that. Thank you for listening to Public Access America. I love you. Happy Easter. No, this is Thursday, so nope. Bye. There you go. Sorry.
That was fun.
Is it? Good. The note wandered